What is going on, everybody? This is Nifuji back with another World of Warcraft video. Long time no see. I did say in my last video I will see you guys in the War Within. It is now the War Within. I've been a little busy grinding. I've been busy with the new job, and honestly, there wasn't a lot of content to do. I actually became a mole person, as you can tell by my mushroom hat. Freaking farm some mounts, but alas, the season is upon us. In just 2 days here, I believe, we're going to be able to finally do some Mythic Zeros, get into normal and heroic raid, and then obviously the week after that we're going to have Mythic raid coming out with M plus finally. So with all this awesome content coming out, I wanted to go ahead and make a season 1 Resto Druid build. If you are new here, I yap a lot, so there's going to be some timestamps down below for you to jump between the two Mythic plus talent builds I'm going to go over, as well as just skip straight ahead to the raid build if you want to do that. Um, and another thing I wanted to note real quick before we jump into this is I do not go super in depth with rotation typically, unless it's niche. I don't go into stat builds or anything like that. If you need like a basic, you just started playing Resto Druid, please go check out the Wowhead guide. It is super great, and then you can come right back here and get into kind of what you can expect in Season 1. So, with all that being said, we're going to go ahead and start with talent build number 1 for Mythic Plus, which is going to be the Wildstalker build. So, if you want to pause here and kind of copy these, knock yourself out. Really, what I anticipate this build being useful for is twofold. One, in lower keys, this is going to provide pretty decent throughput for healing, and you're going to be able to do a lot of damage single target to bosses. So, you're going to be able to help a lot on those bosses when you have Tyrannical. Maybe, Resto Druid not historically being the best at AoE damage, but this does pretty good single target damage. Um, so let's just kind of talk about real quick what kind of like the key points are of this talent build and what you can expect. So the key talent points here and kind of what you can expect from this build is really heavy burst DPS and really heavy burst HPS windows. You have okay overall healing, just doing your normal ramp, but we have this insane, monstrous like burst window of healing, which was actually discovered from some goons over in the Resto Druid Discord, so shout out to them for having that conversation during beta while we were all testing stuff. But really where the healing is going to come from out of this is going to be from a couple pieces, so try to keep up here. So Wildstalker, our main note here is Thriving Growth. Skipping the damage portion, right? Wild Growth, Regrowth, and Efflorescence healing has a chance to cause a symbiotic bloom to grow on a target, which heals them for 88k over 8 seconds. Not much, but it gets better. They can stack, right? So you can combine this talent with this one right here, which makes it so Swiftman forces a symbiotic bloom to grow on that target, and the fact that every single one of your symbiotic blooms increases your healing done by the target affected by 20%, and the fact that we take two Swiftmens, now there's a lot of healing coming in. It would appear that this is stacking as well. The 20% heal buff is stacking, which is nice. And so what does that mean for us? What that means for us is that Convoke is now an insane DPS talent when you use it with Heart of the Wild in cat form. But not only that, it is also just an insane healing talent when you match it with everything we just talked about, plus Reforestation giving you Incarnation Tree of Life for a couple seconds, plus the legendary Nature Swiftness into Convoke combo, which if you don't know what that is, Nature Swiftness makes your next regrowth 100% stronger. If you press that button, don't cast regrowth and cast Convoke right after, every regrowth that is cast in that Convoke hits harder. So that is all of that combined provides you a monstrous burst window of healing. Just to kind of give you an example, on the second boss of City of Threads during beta when I was testing a plus 10, they do an insane amount of damage that overlaps, and I did this combo right during that, and I hit like 1.98 mil HPS for like a couple seconds while there's a ton of damage coming in. So this heals a lot. Damage aside, or damage real quick, I mean, this is your typical cat weaving stuff. Just do cat weaving when you're fighting a boss. And if you have a lot of time to hit a boss where there's not constant damage going out, use Heart of the Wild. And as you push into harder keys like 10s, you're going to have a lot less time to do damage. But again, the nice thing about this is that this does a lot of healing. So I went ahead and got this add-on. A few of you asked to see, which basically like gives you an example of what I'm casting on myself. So I just want to show you kind of what the base combo is, right? So I'm going to go ahead and get some stacks going of this real quick. So as you can see, I have primed 2 stacks of Reforestation, right? So the next Swiftmend I use is going to turn me into a tree. This is where all the healing comes from. So I'm gonna just go ahead and pretend I'm in a group of 5. You can kind of see like I'm putting hots on everyone, you know, Life Bloom me, Life Bloom the tank. We're gonna get 5 stacks of rejuve. Boom. Oh shit, a ton of damage is about to come in. Swift Mend into Wild Growth, into Nature Swiftness, into Convoke. Boom, 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 boom. Oh shit, look at that. Ton of healing, right? Obviously, it's kind of hard to demonstrate that right now, but this does a ton of healing. And it comes from multiple different things. The empowered regrowths are hitting for a monstrous amount during that convoke. On top of that, this new talent, Thriving Vegetation, because of all the buffs and stacks of increased healing we're getting, the you have the possibility for your rejuves that are being cast in Convoke to be hitting for like 1.8 mil, 3 mil. So during Convoke, you're casting a handful of spells that are all hitting for millions of HP. So it does a fuck ton of healing. Now the nice thing about this is you don't always have to use your Reforestation proc with Convoke. You can do that whole combo, but don't turn into a tree. And then the next trash pack, when Convoke is on cooldown, you use Swift Mends to go Incarn form, and you have more balanced healing throughout the dungeon. The burst healing profile of this talent build is fucking nuts. Um, and then again, it does decent damage, and that is kind of how you can expect to play this in M+. Now, the downside to this is if you are a goofball and you use your Convoke early when a ton of damage comes out, you are going to need to be spamming Regrowth like crazy to try and clutch up to help your boys out. So just keep that in mind. This is really strong in burst windows for damage and healing, but if you mess up your cooldowns, you might struggle just a little bit. And that's kind of what you can expect out of this talent build. There's not really a lot of other crazy stuff going on in here. Honestly, you're probably free to make even more tweaks in here if you want to. Like, to be honest, you could probably swap this out for Heartwood if you wanted more, like, better defensives, or, you know, something else. So there's a lot of little tweaks you can make in here, but this should get the job done well enough for you. So the second build that we're going to look at is going to be the Keeper of the Grove build. So I'm going to swap over to that right now. Now, personally, I prefer the Wildstalker build because when you're playing Keeper of the Grove, wherever you have regrowth hotkeyed, you're going to be hitting that button a lot to the point where it is not really fun to play. So, kind of like an issue going into season 1 here of the War Within is that our hots maybe don't feel as strong as they should, or as strong as they used to, rather. However, regrowth feels really good, especially when you have stacks of mastery, to the point where you end up casting regrowth a lot in difficult content. When I was testing 10s in betas with this Keeper of the Grove build, you were spamming regrowth every single trash pack, like literally every single one without fail. But that being said, they have a very interesting damage profile. Instead of doing a lot of single target damage, you basically do none of that, but you do a decent amount of AoE damage because of how much you're spamming regrowth. So let me go ahead and get into some of the talents and kind of explain what's going on here. So key thing with Keeper of the Grove, every time you cast a Grove Guardian, you're going to be able to cast your next targeted heal on someone, and it's going to basically make these little flowers spawn around them that heal them. Additionally, and this is what makes this good in Raid, your Grove Guardians just heal for a little bit more, and each Grove Guardian you have down is giving you a percent stacking heal buff, just like in the last build where the Symbiotic Blooms were stacking. And so you can kind of ramp around your Grove Guardians to get through some difficult packs. Now, what makes this interesting in terms of damage, which is where I want to start, is this talent here, which makes it so that every 5 regrowths you cast makes your next Wrath, Starfire, or Entangling Roots instant and do 100% more damage. I also grabbed this talent here, which makes our spells do a little more damage. And let's see, I also have Nature's Vigil, so you have a kind of separate damage profile here. I don't even know why I have this talent. You could probably swap this out for like Innervate or Improve Stampeding Roar or something like that, right? So what makes this talent build interesting is you're in tree form a lot because of the fact that we're taking Incarn over Convoke, and additionally, Reforestation is still here in this build. And so what's going to end up happening is a little something like this, right? You're going to be having hots on everyone again, just like we did in the last build. However, this time when we're healing, right? Like, here we go, boom, boom. When we go tree form, and you're spamming regrowth, boom, boom, boom. Now you have a free Starfire, right? And that's going to happen a lot. You're going to have a rejuve on everyone, you're going to have wild growth on everyone, and then you're going to be spamming this a lot. And then you're going to keep using rejuves, you're going to keep getting Starfires. So it gets in a spot where in an AoE pack, you're going to have an AoE Sunfire on everyone. Your Grove Guardians are auto-casting Moonfire for you, and then you're getting a lot of insta-cast Starfires on people. Additionally, I'm still taking Master Shapeshifter to keep up with mana, and that kind of all folds into itself where like you do some decent-ish AoE, like I mean it's probably not like MDI professional level, but it does enough damage that it feels fine. You also have Nature's Vigil for this, so you will have some extra damage there. As for talents, I have Cenarian Ward. You can kind of like take a look at the stuff here. Nothing really too exciting. This is like a pretty cut and dry healer's heal type of talent build. If you don't cast any damage spells with this talent build, like it's probably fine, but you're just going to be healing a lot and you're going to be casting regrowth a lot. Um, so really with this, you want to kind of balance out when your Tree of Life is up, and then you want to have reforestation procs available outside of when Tree of Life is up. Throw your hots on everyone in the dungeon group, and then once you have Rejuve, Wild Growth, Life Bloom, Flow down on everyone, you need to be casting Regrowth. I promise you, when you get to higher keys, if you are not casting Regrowth on people and you're like trying to cat weave while you just have Rejuve on someone, people are going to die because the damage profile in these dungeons is very bursty, and if you are not prepared when that damage comes out, they will be dead before you can catch up. I promise you. Especially in dungeons like Stone Vault, in dungeons like City of Threads, where there is some insane damage coming out, and if you're not ready with HOTS out on the entire group so that you have mastery to cast strong regrowths, you're dead. Your group is dead. You're all dead. That's a depleted key. But yeah, that's kind of it in scope of kind of the Mythic Plus talent builds. Again, I am heavily leaning towards the first one. Even currently right now in Heroics, like you just fucking blast on bosses. The Heroics are kind of a joke. So it's going to be a good all-around healing and damage build. The second one is still completely fine if you want to just focus on the healing portion. I'm sure there's some tweaks you can make with the talents there to kind of feed into that some more as well. I don't think Druids are going to be like the M plus Giga Chads they were in the past, but maybe as item level gets pushed up and we find more optimal talent builds, we find more optimal gear pieces, there is a chance they could still do pretty good. Again, some of these dungeons where the bosses actually give you the time to do damage, you can still do a fuck ton of damage as a Resto Druid. Um, cool. So that's kind of it for the Mythic Plus stuff. I want to go ahead and jump into our raid build now. So raid build is going to look like what's pulling up on the screen here. This is also available on Wowhead. What you just heard was my Innervate Weak calling me an idiot. So what you can see here is basically what you're going to get in Raid. And the nice thing is, even with our hero talents, if you've played Resto Druid in Raid before, this is going to be very similar to how we have always played Resto Druid. The main difference from this season and our past season in Dragonflight with kind of how strong Grove Guardians and everything were is one, Grove Guardians are not going to hard carry your healing anymore. Okay, you need to cast heals. And two, we don't have that talent anymore. I think it was called Verdant Soil or something like that, where our rejuves duplicate. Now, the implication of that is that Druid is going to be a lot more like a Disc Priest, where you ramp really heavily for a specific amount of damage. You go nuts, and then you wait for about a minute before you do a big ramp like that again. Now, in between those two ramps, in that 60 seconds, you will probably still need to be throwing out a couple of maintenance heals on people, on the tank, maybe a wild growth every once in a while. But the cool thing is that in lieu of having to spam cast rejuves like we did in Dragonflight so they keep duplicating, now we ramp and then we have a minute to kind of recoup our mana back by doing damage. So Master Shapeshifter got an awesome change where we don't need to go boomy form anymore. A lot of people are complaining about that, and a lot of people are stupid. That was just a waste of a global to have to turn into boomy form every time you wanted to do damage to get mana back. Now you can just straight up blast the boss with Wrath, and you get a fuck ton of mana back. So as you can see right there at the top, one Wrath gives you 44,000 mana back, right? One Rejuve costs 52k mana. So you're almost getting a one-for-one trade of one Wrath equals one Rejuve. You know, it's like 1.2 Wraths or something like that. So what's cool about that is it gives a lot of kind of flexibility in your gameplay, I suppose. Like maybe it's healer damage in a raid. It's really not gonna you're not gonna be up there on the meters, but it is going to still help, especially in Prague where every little bit of damage helps, and you're not griefing by doing damage. You are keeping your mana pool alive. You still have Innervate, but you're not going to be as mana starved as you were in the past where you need like 4 Innervates to do anything. Like you should be able to find windows to do damage to get your mana back, which is going to be awesome. Um, Outside of that, the best thing about Keeper of the Grove in terms of our raid kind of profile is that every part of what makes our raid healing good and our raid ramping good is just buffed in Keeper of the Grove. Like, I don't remember all these nodes by heart, but I'm sure if I just skim through these, I can find a handful. Here's one extra damage that we don't even have to use a global on. We get more max mana. Regrowth on ourself is better. Our damage is better. Our healing is better. Our Swiftman gives us more haste. Our Grove Guardians give us a buff. Like everything heals us more, right? We get better percentage on our healing. Now, I mentioned this in our last video, but what makes this look potentially nuts is the fact that this ability here and this ability here stack. Meaning, if you have three or four Grove Guardians going down during a ramp, your heals are going to be like 40 to 55% stronger, which is fucking nuts, especially when you consider that our 4 set basically just gives us a perma 18% buff on a handful of our heals because it's always after a Swiftmend and you're always using a Swiftmend in a ramp. So, the way to play this properly is you're going to have to literally engrave in your brain that wherever your Grove Guardians are bound, for me is Q, that button is off limits unless you are trying to cash out on a huge ramp or if you had to do a smaller ramp and you need more heals out of it. So let me give you an example, right? And I'm gonna do like a little example here on the add-on, but obviously there's not 20 people in my group. So you have Life Bloom out on someone, you have a million rejuves going out, right? We have Germinate as well. So you're just putting rejuves on a whole bunch of people. Hopefully you can cast like somewhere between 10 to 13 rejuves while you're ramping, right? At the end of this, you're going to pop Swiftmen, you're going to pop Wild Growth, you're going to use all three Grove Guardians at the same time, Flourish, and then if you need to, you're going to be able to capitalize on some more healing with your regrowths that are super cheap from all those rejuves. Throw out a couple more rejuves if you know that there's more damage coming soon after, and then boom, that's it. And as you can see, that used about 25% of my mana. Shout out to the lighting. But the nice thing about that is if you just go hit an enemy, you're going to get that mana back. So it doesn't even really matter. And the other great thing is you can do that every single minute. Like Flourish comes up in a minute, you're going to get your Grove Guardians back in a minute. So every minute or so, you're going to be able to do this insane ramp. Outside of that, you still have Trank. Outside of that, you still have Incarn. You have a ton of healing here, right? And it is just the same ramp you've always seen. So we are looking really good. Now, is it going to be able to hard carry mechanics like Disc Priest can? I mean, I hope so because I love this spec, but we're going to have to wait and see. Unfortunately, when we were doing beta raid testing, no one really knew about the tech yet, so there's not accurate numbers on just how strong this is going to be. I think it's going to be pretty freaking strong, right? And that is kind of what you can expect from your raid build. Nothing else in here has really changed that much. You're just going to do the same ramp playstyle we've always had, except you need to be more disciplined with when you cast your Grove Guardians because, again, you have 3 down, 15% all spell healing increase, 30% on your Rejuve and your Life Bloom. And obviously, Rejuve is the big one there. So if those are out, like just this one Rejuve that I have right now is healing me for 45k every second, right? So it's pretty nuts. And actually, my trees might have fallen off while I did that, but you get the point. But yeah, it's gonna be really strong in raids. So you just need to be disciplined on your ramps and not just willy-nilly throw mana around all over the place and like throw Grove Guardians for no reason and then uh-oh, you need to ramp right now, you don't have Grove Guardians, you're just going to be 45% weaker, sorry. Um, and that's kind of the gist for raid, you know? And yeah. That's a lot of yapping, but hopefully that was like an accurate representation of what you can expect from these different talent builds. I am definitely looking forward to doing Mythic Plus. I am definitely looking forward to Mythic Prog. If you're looking for some extra details on your Abyss gear or other things like that, again, please go check out the Wildhead Guide. That is where I get a lot of information. I get it from there in the Resto Druid Discord. Note on the Resto Druid Discord, there's like 4 million idiots to like 10 intelligent people in there, so just be careful what you read. And again, make sure you practice this stuff yourself. If you're just watching this, go in the game, smack some buttons to practice a little rotation with your ramp and kind of get an idea of how much mana you're going to be spending. Get an idea of how it feels to weave in wraths when you're ramping in a raid, and you should do just fine. If you have any questions or if this yapping was like way too much and you just need like a quick answer to something, feel free to leave it below. And I hope you guys have a great season 1. I should be dropping some videos of raids as we're killing bosses and stuff like that. So yeah, let me know what else you guys want to see, and I'll catch you guys next time. Peace.